Hey guys, I just want to try to help you understand Daniel 2. If you're wanting to understand prophecy, Daniel 2 is a great place to start building your understanding. So if you want to grab a Bible, I'm going to be reading Daniel 2 and explaining as we go. It starts out with this king named Nebuchadnezzar. He's a Babylonian king, and he's a pretty powerful guy, but he has this dream. And so as you start reading here, verse 1 says he had dreams and his spirit was so troubled that his sleep left him. So you can imagine that. It's like a nightmarish type dream. And he gives this command in verse 2. He calls his helpers, all right, the magicians, the astrologers, the sorcerers, the Chaldeans. And maybe you're not familiar with what this type of people are. This type of people are the ones when you're going down the interstate or in whatever city you live in and you see these palm readers. These are the ones that work for him. And you're going to see how helpful they really are. But he calls them in and he says, hey, tell me my dreams. He says, I'm very anxious, verse 3, because I've had a dream. My spirit is anxious to know the dream. And then the Chaldeans, in verse 4, they say to him, well, O king, live forever. Tell your servants the dream, and we will give its interpretation. And the king said, no. My decision's firm. If you don't make known the dream to me and its interpretation, you're going to be cut into pieces. Your houses are going to be made an ash heap, okay? However, if you tell me the dream and its interpretation, you're going to receive from me gifts and rewards and great honor. Therefore, tell me the dream and its interpretation. So, in order to believe these guys that have been on his payroll the whole time, he wants them to tell him his dream. Now, I mean, this is like crazy to try to ask somebody to tell you what you dreamt. But this is what he's saying. I'm not going to believe your interpretation unless you can tell me the dream as well. And so they said again, well, tell your servants the dream, and we'll give us interpretation. He's starting to get ticked off. In verse 8 he says, I know for certain that you're gaining time. You're waiting for the next king. You're waiting for me to die off. You're just going to stay on my payroll. And he says, you're just gaining time. You know my decision's firm. If you do not make known the dream to me, there's only one decree for you. And he says, you've agreed to speak lying and corrupt words before me till the time has changed, as the other king might come about, all right? He says, therefore tell me the dream, and I shall know that you can give me its interpretation. So this is what he's looking for. The Chaldeans, you know what they say? All these wise guys, they all come together and they say, there's not a man on earth who can tell the king's matter. No king, no lord, ruler has ever asked such things of any magician, astrologer, or Chaldean. It's a difficult thing that the king's requiring. There's no other who can tell it except the gods, whose dwelling is not with flesh. So they say this, and then they go on, they say, for this reason, the king was angry. He was very furious. You can imagine this happened. He's been paying these guys for years. All right, and all they're doing is ripping them off. They really have no wisdom, no prophetic ability. They claim to. They claim to be able to read your palm and to tell your future, call this number, and then they turn out to be corrupt crooks. They're scam artists. And so they say all this, but the king got so furious that it says in verse 13, Daniel 2:13, it says, so the decree went out and they began killing the wise men. They sought Daniel and his companions to kill them. See, Daniel and his companions were Hebrews, and they were taken captive to Babylon when Babylon was raised by Nebuchadnezzar while he was out. All right? And they take them there and they make them eunuchs. And you can imagine that if you don't know what that means, but they began to brainwash them. They changed their names. They tried to make them eat a different diet, which Daniel said, no, you can mess with my name, but I'm not going to change my diet for you. I'm not going to eat these corrupt things that God said not to eat. And he was willing to die for that. It's pretty powerful. That's chapter 1. But now, at this particular instance, they're about to be killed off. And so Arioch goes to Daniel and he tells him this, and he tells him what's going on. And then in verse 15, you see Daniel saying, well, why is the decree from the king so urgent? And Arioch made known the decision to Daniel. So Daniel then went and he asked the king to give him time. And this is interesting because he didn't ask permission to go into the king. He just went and asked. And back then, if you just went into the king's presence, you could be killed. But, you know, he's already a dead man walking, basically. And he asked for time that he might give the king the interpretation. Notice it doesn't say the dream. And so Daniel went to his house, and he made known to his other 3 friends that were also captives from Israel with him, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, also known as, now I lost their name, the Babylonian names that everybody always calls them, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, all right? And so he makes it known to them, and they start seeking the mercies of God through prayer. Now, can you imagine that prayer meeting when you know that your head is on the chopping block? Imagine what kind of prayers you're going to have. If you know that within 24 hours you're going to die, you're not going to sleep. You're going to be praying hard, very urgent. And they began to pray, and as they were praying, verse 19 says, the secret was revealed to Daniel in a night vision. What secret? Well, he saw the dream. He saw this dream that Nebuchadnezzar, King Nebuchadnezzar, a pagan king, by the way, that he had. And so he begins to bless God and say, thank you so much, you know, you're the only one that can reveal these type of secrets. And you set up kings and you tear down kings, and you know everything. And so he says that, and then he runs to Arioch and he says, don't destroy the wise men. No, just wait. Take me before the king, and I'll tell the king the interpretation. So Arioch, he gets him real quick, and he tells the king, he says, I found a man of the captives of Judah, this is verse 25, who will make known to the king the interpretation. And the king answered, and he says to Daniel, whose name is Belteshazzar, remember that brainwashing, they changed his name. He says, are you able to make known to me the dream which I have seen and its interpretation? And Daniel answered in the presence of the king and said, the secret which the king has demanded, the wise men, the astrologers, the magicians, the soothsayers, cannot declare to the king. But there is a God in heaven who reveals secrets. He's made known to King Nebuchadnezzar what will be, this is verse 28, look at this, what will be in the latter days. Okay, beyond him. And he says, your dream and the visions of your head upon your bed were these. And he begins to explain this dream now. Notice this. Verse 29, as for you, O king, thoughts came to your mind while on your bed about what would come to pass after this, basically after you're gone. And he who reveals secrets has made known to you what will be. That's future. That's prophecy. But as for me, the secret has not been revealed to me because I have more wisdom than anyone living, but for our sakes who make known the interpretation to the king, that you may know the thoughts of your heart. Okay, now he starts for this dream. He says, you, O king, were watching, and behold, a great image. This great image, whose splendor was excellent, stood before you, and its form was awesome. Notice that. The Bible uses the word awesome. That's verse 31. In verse 32, he says, this image's head was of fine gold. So picture that. An image with a head of fine gold. Its chest and arms were silver. Notice that. It's not as precious. Gold's much more precious than silver. Its belly and thighs of bronze. Notice the metals are getting harder and less valuable. Verse 33, its legs of iron, its feet partly of iron and partly of clay. Verse 34, you watched while a stone was cut out without hands, which struck the image where? Not in its head, not in its chest, not in its legs even, but in its feet. And this is very important. This is crucial that you see that. Struck the image on its feet of iron and clay and broke them in pieces. Then the iron, the clay, the bronze, the silver, the gold were crushed together and became like chaff from the summer threshing floors. What's chaff? Chaff is the stuff when you rub wheat and that stuff that kind of floats